Welcome to another episode of the Balancing Hormones Naturally podcast, where we offer actions and steps you can take today to start balancing your hormones naturally. This is your podcast host, Leah Brueggemann. I am a functional diagnostic nutritional practitioner. I am honored and excited to be your guide on your journey to better understanding your hormonal health and how it affects your everyday life. I am so excited about this episode. I have been wanting to get Mimi on here to share with you her vast knowledge of the benefits of mushrooms, especially AHCC. So you guys are going to be blown away. She mentions a lot of different types of mushrooms. I did link them below. Everything that we talked about is linked below, as well as her podcast episodes. So I know that you are going to absolutely thoroughly enjoy this. Hey ladies, welcome back to another episode of the Balancing Hormones Naturally podcast. I brought on a guest today that I am so excited about. I have chatted her up on stories, so I know you guys are waiting for her, but this is Mimi. She's the host and producer of the Medicine Podcast and also an AHCC educator. And I'm so excited because I know nothing about mushrooms, and I also know that they're so amazing for our hormone health. So I would love for you to kind of share just a little bit about yourself and what got you started doing what you're doing.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, well, thank you for having me, by the way.
Of course.
I am happy anytime I get a chance to spread the word on mushrooms in general, but specifically AHCC. Absolutely. I gobble it up because it's something that the whole world, in my opinion, needs to know about,
Yes.
Especially as over the last coming up on 2 years, the world has been alerted, turned on, you could say, to the importance of not only hormonal health, but also immune health, that
Yes.
your immune system is important year round.
Yes.
And so we'll definitely get into the specifics of AHCC, I am sure. But I would say, let's see, a little bit of my background and what got me into this. That's a long story, so I'm going to try to keep it concise so we can get into some of the other meaty things that you wanted to talk about. But I would say I'm a dental hygienist by degree, so I do not practice clinically right now, but that was my area of study and expertise, if you want to call it that. And I worked clinically for 7 years. And for those, I think everyone knows what a dental hygienist does, but I'm the person who's sitting with the patients, cleaning their teeth and teaching them how to basically take ownership of their oral health in relation to their systemic health. They are absolutely connected. So my most favorite part of my job was presenting information and education in a way where the patient feels empowered to then take ownership of their health, knowing that my job as a hygienist is not to keep your teeth clean. It's not to just floss you and have you on your way. It's actually to give you tools and empower you to take your health into your own hands is the best way that I can explain it. And so doing that with love and empathy and a good sense of humor and some educational tools, that was the favorite part of my job. And so that was what I really focused on. And so that is like in my blood. It's like what I love doing most in the world. And I got to a point physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all of those things in about 2016 when my husband and I actually divorced. We went through a separation and divorce. And I had gotten to a state where the emotional trauma and stress of that combined with at the time, I had these orthorexic tendencies where I was working out 8 days a week. And I wasn't ever like anorexic or anything, but I was eating so clean to the point that it was not enough. I was constantly in a deficit.
Right.
So I'm sure many of your listeners have experienced this to some degree where your hormones get completely out of whack. And So I was at the bottom of this, hormone hellhole where I had zero estrogen,
Yeah.
um, and my hair was falling out, my skin was exploding in acne. I had a rash on half of my body that was completely, no doctor could
Whoa.
explain what it was. I still to this day don't really know what it was. I couldn't digest any of my food. So I would literally eat like the healthiest salad with like the cleanest wild caught salmon, and I would be regurgitating it back up because my stomach
Wow.
didn't have any stomach acid. I had no hydrochloric acid. So when you can't break down your food, your body is
Hmm.
like, we got to get rid of this. So I would
Right.
literally regurgitate it back up. Really awful scenario. So I got to a point where I was so desperate because I was also a health coach on the side. I had clients that I would work with to help,
Hmm.
introduce healthy habits of like most of them wanted to lose weight. All of them wanted to lose weight. So I could help someone do that,
Right.
but I couldn't figure out why my hair was falling out.
Hmm.
So I felt like this fraud almost.
Yeah.
And so then I got to this just point where I was in the shower and my hair was falling out. It came out in like a big chemotherapy sized chunk. And I
Whoa.
just crumpled to the shower floor. I was like, what is wrong with me? I have to figure this out. I have to start doing something different than what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Clearly, my body is trying to speak to me. It's screaming at me at this point. But I'm sure so many women know this feeling where you start getting that external feedback, that external validation of like, girl, your abs look amazing, or like external feedback from the opposite sex. I was single for the first time since I was a teenager, now at 26 or 27, and getting feedback from the opposite sex. And like, it just messes with your mind to an
Hmm.
unhealthy degree. So that was my experience, and I just got to a point where I was like fed up. So I actually had been looking at the Academy of Culinary Nutrition, which
Hmm.
is an online program to basically the certification coming out of that is um, a culinary nutrition expert is what you're called, where you're able to use food and nutrients as medicine for different diseases and conditions, whether for yourself or your family or a cookbook or clients, right? So I went through that. And this at the time, I actually had moved back to my hometown of Spokane, Washington, from Seattle, left my job. I moved out of my apartment, and broke up with my long distance boyfriend. And then I just focused on me. I was just like, I gotta focus on me and my healing. And it wasn't just body, it was emotional, spiritual, everything. So I took a year and just really focused on me and my health. And I
Hmm.
started eating intuitively. So listening to my body when I was hungry, I would eat, whole foods, and I would experiment with what foods I was eating, trying to nurse myself back to health without, using pharmaceuticals or anything like that. And I stopped lifting completely for 6 weeks. I just did walking and yoga and would listen to like things like worship music and, like Sanskrit beautiful tones, and like trying to get my body into a parasympathetic state
Yeah.
and out of this fight or flight that I had been in for years. So that worked, and I was able to like nurse myself back to health. And in that process, I discovered the amazing benefits of medicinal mushrooms. And I had heard of them like on the, Sean Stevenson Model Health Show, like Four Sigmatic, like
Right.
everybody knows those kind of like mushroom coffee things,
Yes.
but I didn't really know how powerful and potent medicinal mushrooms could be. And so then I really started digging into them, and specifically um, AHCC, which comes from
Hmm.
shiitake mushrooms. So
Yep.
AHCC in and of itself isn't a type of mushroom, but it comes from mushrooms. So it's actually a cultured mycelial product from the mycelia or the roots of shiitake mushroom. So I heard about this actually in my dental office. I was talking to one of the other hygienists, and one of her patients had got contracted HPV later in life, like in her 50s, and her naturopath recommended this mushroom, AHCC, to clear the HPV, and it worked. And so I
It's
was like,
crazy.
I was floored. I was like,
Yeah.
what? I was like, aside from the vaccine, the Gardasil vaccine, I hadn't heard of anything that was even remotely close to being targeted for helping women or people with HPV. So that caught my attention. Fast forward, I really started digging into the research and taking it myself and recommending it to people and teaching people about AHCC on Instagram. And then it grew and grew and grew and grew. And then I created a food in combination with my training as a culinary nutrition expert called Brain Hits. And it included AHCC. So it was the first AHCC food out there. And I sold them online, made a website, did the whole thing, shipped them all over the United States and Canada and Mexico.
Dang.
And that was my introduction into this world of owning a business, doing something other than dental hygiene. So I wasn't like trying. I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur or own my own business or anything. But I kept saying yes to things that lit me up.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved being a hygienist. I still miss it to this day, parts of it. But there is so much more impact I've found that I can have teaching people not only about oral health, because I do that, but systemic and reaching people by the thousands and hopefully someday millions maybe about different techniques and medicinal mushrooms and AHCC, because anyone listening to this can probably just pull up their phone, open Instagram, or turn on the news. That's the light that our world needs so badly right now. And so my contribution or gift to the world rather is taking that love and that passion that I had as a hygienist and getting people to take ownership of their health, to say, no, I am smart enough to figure this out. I am capable. I am strong. I can do hard things, and I'm going to figure this out for myself. And that's a scary place, but it's also a very empowering place. So that's what I do today. And I, do it through our podcast, The Medicine, and through our, online business and different partnerships that we do. So I do a variety of things, but that's as concise as I can probably be with including all the details.
I love that. And I find that so many people, like, I actually went to college for music. So I took a hard turn when I got into, health, it has nothing really to do with music. And I find that, you start doing, what you think you're supposed to do, but then something hits you, literally. It's always a personal experience. And that takes you, because you can't help but talk about it, because it has affected your life so emphatically that you're like, okay, everybody needs to know about this. And that's what I noticed the first time I heard you on a podcast. That's how I found you. And you were so excited about AHCC. And I'm over here going, what the heck is AHCC? Yeah. Like, I've heard of like lion's mane, reishi, like all these things, but you were so emphatic about this, type of mushroom. I'm like, I've never even heard of this. How is this a thing? And I thought, like, I still to this day remember I called my mom. I'm like, have you heard of this mushroom? She's like, no. I'm like, this is all the stuff it can do. She goes, no. There's no way something can do that. We would have heard about it by now.
Which is why I exist now.
Yes. So I would love to kind of start with maybe some foundational things with mushrooms before we get really into depth with AHCC. So, I will be your experiment, because I feel like I don't know that much about mushrooms. Like, if someone's just starting into the mushroom world and goes, okay, I've heard a lot about, the benefits of mushrooms, but where do I start if I know nothing?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. So first, I will say that when you say mushrooms, there are generally 3 categories that mushrooms fall into. The culinary, ones that you would find in a stir fry, medicinal or functional mushrooms. And some of them have overlap, right? Like shiitake and lion's mane, both are culinary mushrooms, but they're also very powerful functional mushrooms or medicinal mushrooms.
Okay.
And then we also have the category of psychedelic mushrooms. And within, and then outside, we do have more of like the poisonous ones that we don't need to talk about those, but they're also like poisonous ones. So I'm just going to put this disclaimer out. I say this on every podcast if I remember. If you're going out and picking mushrooms because you heard this girl, Mimi, talking about mushrooms and you see one in the forest and you're like, oh, I'm going to pick that and plop it into my tea. Absolutely do not. I'm going to put this disclaimer out that you must go with a professional forager if you are going to be picking or touching any mushrooms at all, ever. So with that being said, these three categories, culinary, medicinal or functional, and psychedelic. Most of the ones that you hear about people, using for, oh, I want to balance my hormones, or I want to clear HPV, or I want to assist my body in, dealing with cancer. You're talking about functional or medicinal mushrooms.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I will, in this conversation, I'm going to stay within that category of medicinal and functional mushrooms. Okay. So where to start? I think that there's over 300 different mushrooms in medicinal use today. There's thousands and thousands of mushrooms out there, but there's over 300 in use, common use today, just for medicinal purposes. There are, so it's impossible for me to speak to them all, but I would say a great place to start is, if we're talking about kinds, reishi is a wonderful place, a wonderful mushroom to get in your body. And I say that because I often refer to her as the Beyonce of mushrooms, because she is the queen, like hands down the queen. And what I mean by that is she has the longest list of benefits of any mushroom out there. So when you look at a list of all the benefits, she really positively can benefit every system from head to toe, meaning cognitive, respiratory, hormone, endocrine system, circulatory system, all the way down, like immune function, just you name it, yes. So that's getting a mushroom in your body that really can help balance the body on multiple different systems is really, really great. Now, with that, there are certain mushrooms that have like more of a well-known benefit, like lion's mane, for instance, is known to be cognitive support and neuroprotection. So they've seen it actually protect the brain prophylactically, preventatively from dementia and Alzheimer's.
Wow.
And also they have seen it, I'm not sure if there's any in vivo studies right now with humans going on currently, but I know that they have done this in the mouse model type of clinical trial, where these mice with induced Alzheimer's, meaning that the clinicians actually have to induce Alzheimer's by giving the mice brain damage.
Yeah.
They are fed, I'm like, poor little mice. They are fed lion's mane, and within like 16 days, the researchers started to see that the Alzheimer's was reversing and like clearing up.
That's so wild,
right?
So I can't imagine like if people were just taking that for preventative,
Yes.
That would be insane.
Which I just as a side note, but I used lion's mane in my coffee this morning. It's such an easy thing to just add to coffee or teas or smoothies or oatmeal or anything like that. So that's just an example of a mushroom that hits every system in the body, and then another one that's used mainly for one or two of its like more pointed benefits. So when you're talking about, okay, well, how am I supposed to get this in my body? Is it capsules? Is it a gel? What is it? Is it a spray? And you'll see all different types of mediums. You'll see capsules, you'll see mushroom coffees, you'll see tinctures. So it's less about the delivery, like, oh, is a powder better or a capsule. It's less about that and more about the sourcing and the ingredients and contents of that medicinal mushroom product. I
Yeah.
will say that medicinal mushroom products are absolutely not created equally. There is so much garbage out there because this is not a regulated, industry. Supplements are not regulated, and we don't really want that. Honestly, we want to have the freedom to create and use these like we do, but in a really mindful and intentional way, and knowing exactly what's going into your body is what I always recommend. So with mushrooms, it gets sort of dicey because there's a few different ways that you can tell if your mushroom products are genuine. And what I mean by genuine is that they're not full of fillers. So mushrooms, I'm trying to figure out how I want to start this. So people who grow mushrooms in mass quantities, they do it on usually some type of grain, like oats or rye or rice, something like that. And that's not bad. You have to grow the mycelium on something, some sort of medium. And so they grow it on these oats, we'll say. And then the mushroom is just the end life cycle, like the end part of the life cycle of the mushroom. The mushroom cap, or the fruiting body is what it's called. The little thing that you see poking up through the grass, that's the fruiting body. And sometimes growers don't even let it get to that stage before they just put all the mycelium and the oats, this mass, into a grinder, and they make a powder. So what you're getting is not even mushrooms. It's
oats.
A lot. Yeah. Really expensive rice or oats. And you are getting some mycelium, which we love mycelium. AHCC is a mycelium-based product, but you're also getting a lot of oats where I'm like, yeah, I love oats, but I'm not going to pay $40 for them.
Right.
And, someone could be taking these mushroom extracts for something serious like HPV, saying they're like, oh, I'm getting all these wonderful benefits, when really you're not, because it's just rice. So I always want to make sure that, I'm happy to help people. Like, people slide into my DMs all the time and like send me an ingredient list and like a brand, like show me the front and the back of the mushroom product that you're looking at, and I will do my best to help you figure out if this is actually mushrooms or if it's mostly grain and filler. So that's a place to start, is just awareness that if you're just going on Amazon and finding a $10 mushroom product, it's probably rice.
Yeah. So that I can imagine, because myself, looking at supplement labels all the time, and now I'm like, oh, I have to learn about mushroom labels now. So what are some brands? Do you have any brands that off the bat you'd be like, okay, these are a safe place to kind of start looking?
Yes. And before I say that, I will give another tool that someone can use to know if maybe the mushroom product they already have, maybe they've already bought it, they want to know, is this legit or is it rice? You can dab a little on your finger and then put it on your tongue. If it tastes at all sweet, I feel like I'm going to sneeze.
You're fine.
If it tastes at all sweet, like crackers or bread or, like crushed up cereal, some of them taste like, which is like, this isn't bad, but it's definitely not mushrooms. Right. Mushrooms have a very earthy, sometimes bitter, lion's mane, for instance, smells a little bit like fish. Yeah. So it's anything, but it's not too bad, but it's faint. It's definitely not sweet is what I'm saying. So if it tastes at all sweet, you're probably paying a lot for oats and rice. Another thing you can look at is if you're looking at an array of a company and they have like 4 or 5 different mushrooms. Mushrooms are like the rainbow. When you look at reishi, which is dark brownish black, all the way to tremolo, which is white, and lion's mane, which is almost white, there is a rainbow, a myriad of colors within all of these different mushrooms. And then cordyceps is right in the middle, kind of like a rusty brown. If all of their mushrooms look like the same type of beigey taupe tan type white kind of color, like the color of most walls when you walk into anywhere,
Yeah.
like that tan, it's probably because they're all growing in the same way and they're all combining those oats, because oats,
Yeah.
rice, rye, they all are kind of the same color, the same shade, right? So that's another way. And then you can also tell by the origin, the country of origin. Where was this grown?
Okay.
If it was grown in the United States, just the way that economics work in the United States, to grow mushrooms, it is insanely expensive. Enough mushrooms to actually be ground up and put in a bag and sold on Amazon or store shelves or whatever, it's insanely expensive. So if it's grown in the US, the only way that they can keep their doors open is to sell this mycelial biomass, is what it's called. So if you see that in the label, in the ingredient list, it's US grown and it's got mycelial biomass. Ooh, that sounds fancy. That sounds like something I want in my body. That's a fancy term for this mycelial mass with oats.
Okay.
Another thing you can look at on the ingredient list is full spectrum. If it says full spectrum, which it's like, I don't want half spectrum, full spectrum sounds great. And this is all marketing, right? It's all marketing tools. It's, some guy in a boardroom being like, okay, how can we like make this a little fancier? It's misleading. And so mycelial biomass, full spectrum, and if there's any type of like organic oats, it's probably mostly organic oats.
Okay.
So few tips there. As far as brands, I just, as I don't know, a karmic virtue, I choose not to speak poorly about any mushroom brands that I know of who are not doing things the way that I would if I was running a mushroom company. I only speak to brands that I love, where
Yeah.
I've gone through the hula hoops of checking out, are they legit? So the brand that I use mostly for, pretty exclusively for mushroom extracts is called Real Mushrooms.
Okay.
You can probably guess why they chose that name.
Yeah.
It's because it's real mushroom fruiting bodies, and they comes from the founder of the company is Jeff Chilton, who is one of the probably the originators, the original people who brought mushrooms to the North American market. So medicinal mushrooms weren't a thing in the 80s and 90s. Like you didn't see that was happening. So he actually was the one that started going to these conventions and bringing a reishi mushroom with him and like talking to vendors, talking to people. I mean, traditional Chinese medicine has been using mushrooms for literally thousands of years. And like, we're just like coming into the wonders and benefits of medicinal mushrooms. So he was one of the original people, and he has over 45 years of growing experience under his belt. So this guy is an OG. So I trust him fully, and I've actually interviewed him. I think it's episode 9 or 10 of my podcast,
We'll
and
have
you'll
to
just
link
hear,
that.
you'll just hear like this guy is legit. So Real Mushrooms, absolutely. They have both powders that you can add to like coffee. I make a little coffee elixir every morning, and coffee is a really wonderful carrier of medicinal mushrooms because of that earthy kind of bitterness that's just inherent in coffee. It carries it really well. You can no one can even ever tell that I have mushrooms in their coffee when they come over and I make one for them. And then you can also add them to things like smoothies or oatmeal or soups or sauces. They're really easy. But if somebody doesn't want to do that, doesn't want to worry about it, all of their products come in capsule form. So I just prefer powders over capsules. Nothing wrong with capsules. It's just my preference that I don't like swallowing a bunch of pills every day.
No, I get that. I drink mushroom coffee every morning. I drink the cane coffee. And so now I'm like, what other mushrooms can I stick into my coffee in the morning?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's great. King coffee is I'm sure your listeners and followers know, but it's the reishi spores. So I was
Yeah.
talking about getting, reishi, a good starting point is reishi because it hits so many different systems in the body. And that's how I get mine every single day is via reishi spore coffee. I don't drink regular coffee anymore. It's too acidic for my gut. And this is just a beautiful way to hit two birds with one stone, even though I hate that
No,
saying.
well, I got started on King Coffee a while ago. I want to say like almost a year ago. And I started because it was either try that or completely have no coffee for my
Mm,
unending future.
mm,
Because my HPA access postpartum was like annihilated, for lack of a
mm.
better term. And so I started drinking King Coffee, and I mean, I didn't really notice that much of a difference. I was just, living my life. But after, I want to say a month of exclusively having that, and I've never had an issue with coffee before. I had a cup of regular coffee, and I didn't know what was happening to me. I had
Your
such
body
bad anxiety, like
yeah,
my hands were jittery, and I've never had that issue. And I looked at my husband, I was like, I cannot do this. I
yeah.
need my mushrooms.
Your body, like my body does that too, where it like rejects it. And it's more like gut based for me, where after 2 sips of regular coffee, even if it's organic, fair trade, bougie AF coffee, my body will reject it and my gut will feel like it's actually on fire because it's so
Yeah.
acidic.
Yeah. No, that's, ugh, yeah.
But you can,
I will
yeah,
not be going back.
absolutely. So to answer your question, you can add definitely like I add medicinal mushroom extracts to from real mushrooms. I add the powder, just blend it in with a little hand mixer.
Mhm.
I did lion's mane today. I do cordyceps. Reishi is again, you can add more reishi, but if you get the reishi powder, I will give you a hot tip here. Reishi is one of the most bitter things on the face of this planet.
Okay.
And if you just like put a spoonful in your coffee, it's very, very, very bitter. So if somebody's starting out with the reishi from real mushrooms, try the capsules. But lion's mane tremella is another really good one that's supportive for skin. Tremella
Okay.
mushroom holds 500 times its weight in water. And so
Whoa.
it does that for your cells, for your skin cells. It also produces this antioxidant called superoxide dismutase, which is a really, really powerful antioxidant for the skin. And so it's going around and gathering up those free radicals and literally helping you glow from the inside out by delivering and holding more moisture in your skin, in your cells. And it's not just for looking young, like skin cells and any cell need hydration just to function, just to
Hmm.
do their job, whatever their job in the body is. And if you are not hydrated, then that efficacy goes down. So tremella holds more moisture in your cells.
It's kind of like hyaluronic acid, but
Yes, so
internally.
yes, exactly. It's 5 times more potent than hyaluronic acid.
Wow, that's wild. Ugh, I have more mushrooms I need to try now. So okay, I know people are going to ask this because I'm asking this. Like, is there too many mushrooms at one time? Like, I'm thinking, like, how many mushrooms can I just stick in my coffee in the morning? Like, what's our ratio there?
Yeah, well, the wonderful thing about mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, is no one has, to my knowledge in history, has ever overdosed on medicinal mushrooms or
Oh,
psychedelic for that matter. Now, like I said, there are poisonous ones, but we're talking about the powders and the capsules and all of
yeah.
that. Just for frame of reference, because this is a good question, I use in my morning coffee alone, I have like 5 or 6 different mushrooms.
Okay.
And then throughout the day, I am continuing because I use things like Organifi, which have medicinal mushrooms in them. I might have a second or even third king coffee of the day. So you really don't, I say this with like caution a little bit
Right.
because you don't want to be wasteful, right? You
Hmm.
want to make sure like you're able to assimilate and use all of the mushrooms that you're putting into your body.
Hmm.
Like you could easily use the entire bottle of one of your mushroom supplements, but that's sort of wasteful.
Yeah.
So you don't need to be worried about having too many mushrooms. That being said, some of these mushrooms, like the king coffee, are very potent.
Mhm.
And if somebody's toxicity buckets, right, inside their body, if your body is dealing with a lot in the form of heavy metals and parasites and mold and EBV and Lyme, all of this, and you're, not pooping, you're not sleeping, you're stressed, you're watching your screens all the time. If those toxicity buckets are really full and something like a reishi mushroom comes in and starts that process of kind of like getting rid of some of that stuff,
Mhm.
that you can feel that toxicity bucket start to be shaken up. And what
Right.
that feels like is almost like flu-like symptoms, where somebody could, again, this is not everyone, this is a very small percentage of people, but it does happen. So something to be aware of, where you might feel jittery, you might feel anxious, you might have, brain fog, you might feel like sluggish or fatigued, almost like flu-like symptoms.
Mhm.
That is possible if, these potent mushrooms, it's not that what they're doing in your body is bad. It needs to happen, honestly.
Mhm.
But it's just that you're feeling that overflow of that
Okay.
toxicity sort of being stirred up, if that makes sense.
So start slower,
Yeah.
so that we don't have those reactions. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
And most people can start with, like, if you're talking about King Coffee, you can start with a full packet. And
Mhm.
if for some reason you're feeling that, you can reduce it back to half a packet and start there and slowly kind of titrate up.
Mhm.
And most people, what I hear from them, it hasn't been many, but the people that have reached out to me, they kind of like break through it after like a week or so. So it's not going to be there forever. And I don't, I haven't heard really any other like major side effects or anything from people using like the race or the real mushrooms
Mhm.
extracts. I've really never, I don't think I've ever had anyone come back and say like, oh, I'm having this reaction. What does it mean with the
Right.
real mushroom extracts? It's just that the reishi spores are potent. They're
Mhm.
they're up to 80 times more potent than the fruiting body. So
Dang.
just something to be aware of.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I feel like if you're just kind of wanting to touch all your bases, start with reishi
Hmm.
and then, decide like where you are needing support and you can kind of go from there.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
Makes
also
sense.
have, maybe I can send you a link. I have an episode where I think it's called How to Use Mushrooms Like a Pro. And I
Yeah.
go through a bunch of different kinds and what you would want to use them for and how you would want to use them. It's a really great resource for people. And I also have, information all over my Instagram that people can kind of sort and sift through. But I would say that reishi for sure. We're going to talk about AHCC. That's another one that I don't miss. Every single
Hmm.
day, I'm taking reishi and AHCC. If I don't use any other mushrooms, I know I'm getting those too. And then other ones that are really popular, lion's mane, cordyceps, chaga, tremella is not as popular, but she's still a badass. Um, and turkey tail is another one.
I've
That
heard of that one. Yeah.
maitake is another one. So yeah, they all have their own little like subset of benefits. Aside,
Yeah.
all of them are to some degree they're adaptogenic in nature,
Hmm.
which I should have mentioned this earlier. Is I'm sure your audience knows what an adaptogen is, but if there's anyone that doesn't, it's like a little team of doctors going into your body and assessing for you. Oh, she's really stressed over here. Like, let's take some of these stress hormones down.
Hmm.
Oh, she's having horrible sleep lately. Let's increase her GABA and help her sleep tonight. Or oh, this immune function. Oh, there's some cervical dysplasia. Let's kick the immune system into gear and help her heal these cells. So it's like this little
Yeah.
adaptogenic set of doctors that goes in and is able to kind of assess what you need specifically and then deliver that. So it's has this like modulating effect in the body.
Ugh, that sounds amazing. So I've only ever taken reishi and I think lion's mane. So now I'm ready to dive into more mushrooms.
Yes, love
Um,
it.
okay, let's talk about AHCC because I am so excited to hear your take and how it helps with HPV, but also I was reading that it, helps autoimmune and Lyme. And I'm like, oh my goodness, so many people
Yeah.
need to hear about this. So talk to
Yes.
me about it.
So I kind of just spoke to this, but I will echo it. AHCC has, and really the reason why I named my product Immune Intel AHCC is because on a fundamental level, AHCC is bringing more immune intelligence to your body. It's not boosting the immune system. It's not suppressing the immune system. It is bringing more intelligence, meaning that your body, whether it needs to be boosted or suppressed, like in the case of autoimmune, we actually need to calm the nervous or the immune system down, right? Like it's on overdrive and it's, sort of like not attacking, that's not the right word, but it's causing inflammation where it really doesn't need to, right? Like in rheumatoid arthritis or something. So AHCC has the ability to help assist the body in, okay, we have more of these T cells and NK cells that are like these generals of the immune system. And it's also increasing the communication between those cells. So we are increasing, sometimes I call it the immune army. We're increasing the army's intelligence. And then we're also increasing the communication via chemical messengers like cytokines. That these cells use to communicate, to know what every part of the body and every part of the immune system is doing. So that's why it works for such a wide variety of conditions in the body, something like stage 4 cancer, all the way to like Lyme disease or epilepsy or HPV or herpes or hidradenitis suppurativa or acne. It's really supporting the body, really the entire physiology of the body, like head to toe, whole system, which is why I lump it in with reishi, because they both hit so many systems in the body by the immune intelligence addition, and then it's also decreasing stress hormones in the body like cortisol and norepinephrine, which for a lot of people are out of whack or really high all the time. And then it's also decreasing systemic inflammation by decreasing C-reactive protein, which is basically the blood marker that your doctor looks at to assess how much inflammation you have in your body. If your CRP is really high, then you can, assume that you have a lot of inflammation in your body. So I don't know if there's one condition or disease that isn't linked to one or all of those: the immune system, inflammation, and stress. So when you're hitting all of those, it really touches a lot of different problems in the body. So that's when I learned more about this. I was like, I can't not tell people about this. It's just one of a kind. It's an absolute unicorn.
Yeah. And I was just blown away by the testimonials that I've heard from AHCC, from doctors using it in tangent with like chemo, to people, getting tested negative for HPV after using it. I'm like, this is crazy. So,
Yeah.
I get how it comes in and works with your body, but could you dive a little bit into like specific things that either you've seen it help with your clients, or just so people can be like, yep, that's me?
Yeah. So oh my gosh, I've heard it all. A lot of people will start taking AHCC for its immune benefits, say something like HPV or autoimmune. A lot of people with Lyme.
Okay.
And what I hear back from them is, oh my gosh, it's helping this XYZ, what I started taking it for. But I'm also noticing like side benefits of my digestion is better. My pooping is on point. I'm sleeping better. I feel more balanced. My hormones are balanced for the first time. My skin, I hear this one all the time. Women telling me, yes, it's making me feel awesome, but also my skin is clearer than I've ever had it in my adult life. And I believe that is because it's doing so much work to balance and calm. And we know, a lot of times it can be multifaceted for sure, but acne is so inflammatory. right? And if there's a lot of inflammation and fieriness and your body's trying to speak to you and trying to get things out and it's really
Yes.
like on fire, right? You probably, or gut disruption, then you're going to have this acneic response, which I've been there. I mentioned, and it's awful. And so when somebody has been struggling with that, and then they start taking AHCC for their HPV or fill in the blank, and then they also notice like, holy crap, my skin is clear. I hear that one a lot, which is really great. Oh my gosh, and the ones that really, really have gotten to me, like getting emotional, are the ones where, and I share these stories, but I have to like let people know that I cannot make any claims that this is for sure going to be the outcome for, Sharon, if she starts taking AHCC today. I can't make claims because everybody is so different. That being said, I have had a few stage 4 cancer patients. They're not my patients, but they're cancer patients, and they're going through some sort of treatment. And one guy, he had stage 4 prostate cancer, and his daughter follows me on Instagram, and she purchased AHCC for him. And in 6 months, he was in remission.
Whoa.
And the
From
only
stage 4.
Yeah, dude.
That's
and
wild.
The only other thing that they were doing, they didn't do chemo, they didn't do radiation, they didn't do surgery. It was inoperable. And the only other thing that he was doing was hormone shots. I think some sort of like, I could be misspeaking, but I think it was like some sort of like testosterone or something, some hormone shot that he was doing, I think once a month was what he was doing. So it was very minimal. There were other factors, but I mean, she came back to me and she texted me. I gave her my number. I was like, please, if you have any questions, like, please, talk to me, reach out. And she texted me one random day and was like, hey, I just thought you would like to know that my family and I are out celebrating my dad because he has been on AHCC for 6 months, and he just got news back from his oncologist that he's in remission. And man, those stories are like,
they're life-changing.
Yeah.
That's why you do what you do. Dang, that's so, and that's priceless. When you find something that can impact a life that much, like, I mean, that's not just his, it's his family. They get more time with him and all of that. Okay, so now that you have me tearing up, let's go into like autoimmune Lyme, because I have a lot of women actually with Hashimoto's and also Lyme, and they're obviously doing all the things lifestyle, but it's still especially when it gets diagnosed later, it's always like a catch and release. It's always up and down and up and down. And how would HCC potentially be helpful in those areas?
Yeah, well, I'll start with Lyme. So there's actually a study that I would like to send to you. It's a clinical in vivo, double-blind, placebo-controlled, all of that, gold standard study, where I think for 2 months, they had a group of Lyme patients taking AHCC 3 grams a day, which is pretty minimal. It's not a high dose. And after 2 months, 100% of the experimental group, their symptoms were either partially or 100% ameliorated. So in 2 months of taking AHCC, some of them said, all my symptoms are gone. And many of them said, a lot of my symptoms are gone. So what that's doing, and I'm not a Lyme expert by any means. I have to I have to know a little bit about a lot of different kind of conditions because I get so many questions.
Yeah.
And I try to be the best resource for this clinical research that I can, but there's no way I can be an expert in all of it. But to my knowledge, there are generally 2 ways of dealing with Lyme, 2 big general ways where it's like, help the immune system or kill, right? The kill mode is like kill the bacteria, including some of the other like good stuff in our body. And so AHCC would fall under more of the immune intelligence. Again, we're adding immune intelligence, and you're increasing your body's immune cells that can identify and properly take care of the different types of bacteria in the body that are causing Lyme disease that are really hard to get rid of.
Right.
So you're empowering the body versus focusing on the kill mode. And one of my good friends, Christina Rice, I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's kind of a mogul in the health and wellness space, and she's just a total badass. And she unfortunately had Lyme and mold exposure and everything, and she had tried everything on under the sun. She's one of those people that are like, I'll try it. And she tried AHCC, and she said it's the only thing that has made a significant difference in her Lyme symptoms. And now it's something that she will not ever go without. And I have other stories too of women with Lyme who have, it's sort of like some of them say, I think I'm getting better, but sometimes you don't notice it until you stop taking it. And that's what I hear from women is like, especially if they're trying to conduct their own little type of experiment with their own body where it's like, okay, I feel pretty good. But maybe I'm just not flaring up. You know how it kind of comes in flares?
Yeah.
And so then they stop taking AHCC or they run out or whatever. And then they tell me like, holy shit, sorry if I can't cuss on here.
You're fine.
Holy crap. I feel like crap. Now not taking it. So then they realize like, oh, the AHCC really was working well. In the case of autoimmune, which that is such an umbrella term because there's over 80 something autoimmune, recognized autoimmune disorders out there. And I have quite a few people in my life that I know personally. My sister and my aunt and my grandma all have rheumatoid arthritis. And it's AHCC has helped all three of them. My aunt and my grandma don't take it as religiously as my sister. She is 37, I think, and she was diagnosed at 30, which is very young. And she started taking AHCC, and she again did the little experiment where she wanted to just see what would happen if she stopped taking it. And she was feeling really good. She was at the point before she started taking this where she couldn't even walk downstairs. She couldn't even open a jar of like peanut butter. So it was really bad. And she now is taking a regular daily dose of AHCC, and this is the best kind of review because it's like my family. She says that most days I don't even remember that I have RA.
That's massive.
Yeah. And she is on one medication, but even when she doesn't take AHCC, she has flare-ups. So, and then, there's so many different autoimmune disorders. You mentioned Hashimoto's, that has an autoimmune link, kind of in the hypothyroid family, where I actually did an interview with Amy Hormone, who is a thyroid expert. She's a doctor, and she has started incorporating using she's one of my ambassadors actually for Immune Intel AHCC. She helps her Hashimoto's clients and patients by recommending AHCC for them. And it's impossible for me to gather all of whoever's using it, like all of these reviews, but I do know that she continues to recommend it. So from that, I'm like, well, it's got to be working, right? If she's continuing to recommend it for her clients and patients. So, but not everyone. I wish that everyone would come back to me and give me their story, whether it was exactly what they wanted or blew their mind, or maybe it wasn't what they wanted or what they hoped for, because I'm like the AHCC encyclopedia on Instagram right now. And it's so helpful when people can come back to me in typed form and give me their story, because then I can help other people, someone who's like, hey, I have XYZ, does AHCC help with this? And I'm like, well, There's not a clinical paper yet about that, but I did just have someone last week tell me this review. Here it is. And, or, yeah, my homegirl, Katie, I don't know, Katie had this problem. I bet she would talk to you if you wanted. So I'm like connecting people. I'm doing my best to connect people and give information. Yes, it's anecdotal, but when you get to, I'm sure you know this, when you get to a point where you're desperate, you're like, I don't care if it's anecdotal. I will try anything.
Yeah.
But I will say also AHCC has a mountain of clinical research behind it. 34 years of clinical research. It is the most clinically researched functional food in the world. So I don't say all that just to demean the clinical research. There's a lot. And to put that into perspective for someone who maybe doesn't know, because this is registered as a functional food, it's a dietary supplement, you know, it's not a medication. For a functional food to have even one clinical study is like nuts, unheard of. It's like great. To have over 30 or more, it's more now, but is like another thing that makes it a unicorn.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so, for example, like with someone with endometriosis or something that, needs more studies behind it, there's not anything that's like, this will cure endometriosis. Is there any negative side effects to just being like, I'm going to try HCC? I've tried everything else. Like, is there a negative side effect to just trying it?
Short answer is no. I get these questions all the time where I just mentioned like, hey, I have XYZ, and endometriosis is one that I get a lot. I'm definitely not an endo expert at all, but I do get that question enough. Again, there is no study yet on endometriosis, but because of the safety of AHCC, and they've tested it like rigorously, it is as well safety researched as any pharmaceutical on the market. So what that means is they go through these safety trials when they put a drug, or in this case a functional food, on the market. They go through these safety trials where they want to know at what dose does this become dangerous for someone, either negative side effects or even something like death, right? They're doing this on mice or rats. And it's kind of funny because they gave these rats and mice in this safety study the equivalent of what would have been 600 grams for you and I, for a human, where I take like 1.5 grams a day. So they're giving these little mice the equivalent of 600 times that amount, and nothing happened to them.
You couldn't even swallow that many pills.
Right. That's what I mean. It's like, I don't want people to do this, but it is so safe. Like, yeah, you could take the whole bottle and you'd probably be fine.
Yeah.
You might poop your pants, but you'd probably be fine. Because it is an actual like a gut stimulant for the good bacteria. It's feeding the good bacteria in your gut. So I'm being kind of flippant there, but to answer your question, it is so extremely safe that if somebody did have some ailment or condition and they've tried everything under the sun, I would say AHCC is a safe bet to try. The only caveat I will say is that I always have to say, because I'm not a doctor, I don't give medical advice. This is merely just for educational purposes, and I just try to provide sort of subtitles and a link to the clinical research that's out there. But keep talking to your doctor. Consult your doctor anytime you take something new or combine it with other medications or supplements. But I will also say, don't be surprised if they have never even heard of AHCC, because that's not where their training is. Unless they're a Chinese traditional medicine, naturopath, they probably haven't heard of using medicinal mushrooms to help with XYZ. So what I usually recommend for people is if you are currently working with an MD or a doctor or even a naturopath, naturopaths don't, just because they practice natural medicine doesn't mean they're all super open-minded, or don't, shun something that they've never heard of. Like, I've heard this from so many people that they'll say, like, well, I mentioned it to my doctor and he had never heard of it, so he said not to take it. And it's like, well, that's like saying, like, I've never heard of that book, I'm not going to read it, and I don't think it's good. Like, that doesn't make sense. And it also doesn't negate the 34 years of clinical research that's already available to anyone who wants to look it up. So what I recommend is, if you're serious about it and you want to talk to your doctor, print off some of the clinical research and physically hand it to your doctor in your appointment. So that way you're not having to be this, like, well, it's a mushroom and I don't really know what it does. Like, be your own advocate, be intentional, be intelligent about it, print it off, bring it to them, or email it to them. But if you have it physically in your hands, then you're basically getting around that, like, oh, I didn't see the email, or I was too busy, or whatever. So really this is, again, falling under being your own advocate.
Yeah, which is really very important. So where does this fall with pregnant nursing moms when it comes to like AHCC or just mushrooms in general? I know you're probably going to say talk to your doctor, but any insight you can give would be helpful as well.
Yes. I always have to say talk to your doctor, but I will actually give some real answers here. I have to frame it in the way of, it's always up to the mom. Some moms, some moms are fine drinking a glass of wine every week during their pregnancy. I'm not saying you should do that.
Yeah.
My point is that some moms won't even use an essential oil or something, like, or, drink a cup of coffee or whatever. It comes down to what the mother is okay with. What is she, what are you comfortable with? That's the first place, because if you sit and you're balanced and you're in a sort of like quiet space and you're asking your body, like, is this something that could benefit me? And you get a resounding no from your body, listen to it. But if you're really intrigued by it and you get a resounding yes, I think this is something that I want to look into and I want to try, then I will say that I have lost count of the the amount of moms in every stage, in every stage of trying to conceive, pregnancy, and then nursing, who have used AHCC, including my own sister. Not the one with RA, a different sister. I have 3 of them, but so I will say that there have been many moms at every stage who have used it, and their babies are beautiful and healthy and wonderful. Nothing was wrong. I will also say that if and when I ever become pregnant, I'm not going to change anything that I'm doing, because I've spent so long researching into how AHCC works in the body. I've witnessed thousands and thousands of people having amazing results with it. I've seen the safety trials. I'm confident that it's something that would aid my body during that time. I'm not saying you have to go crazy with it. But if it is something that you are interested in, I would say there's no intuition like a mother's intuition.
Yeah.
And I can't even fully speak to that because I'm not a mother, but I fully believe that. So if your body's telling you, like, yeah, we like this, then I would say listen to those little whispers.
Yeah, I can totally get that. And then as we wrap up, because I know we're going super long, can you tell us where to get AHCC? Because my vague knowledge of this, I do know that it has to go through some place that's been patented for sourcing or something like that.
Yes.
So just to make
memory.
sure people get the correct stuff.
Yes, good memory. So I have my private label of AHCC that's called Immune Intel AHCC that I have mentioned. And we are, by the time that this airs, we are back in stock. So that's the one I would recommend.
Yeah.
But I will say that because you're right, it does have to go through the manufacturers in Japan do
Mhm.
have a patent on the manufacturing process. So if it says AHCC and it has a little R, with a circle
Mhm.
around it, that's the trademark. And so they legally can't use that unless it's coming from that one source
Okay.
in Japan. That being said, there are also brands who put HCC on the bottle, but they have just a tiny little sprinkling, maybe like 100 milligrams, where that's not going to do anything in your body. You need like
Mhm.
at least minimum a gram.
Mhm.
And for someone with, I didn't mention this yet, but with someone, someone who has HPV or Lyme or, cancer or something like that, at least 3 grams a day, which would be 4 of my capsules. And you want
Okay.
to split that AM and PM. This is according to the research. This is not
Mhm.
my medical advice. Keep talking to your
Right.
doctor. But this is according to the research. These are the best findings, the best outcomes have come from this at least therapeutic dose of 3 grams per day.
That totally makes sense. Okay, so make sure it's trademark, and I'll post your link below, because I know it's been out of stock forever. I've been staring at it.
Yeah, I know. And it's honestly a global problem because
Yeah,
like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, um, the increase in global awareness of immune health has increased the demand of AHCC
totally
all over
makes
the
sense.
world. So it's great that more people are learning about it and all of that, but also that in combination with all the lockdowns and shutdowns. I mean, factories are closed, manufacturing plants are
Yeah.
closed. Now things are moving along better, but there's still, this is just like a little insider, uh, you know, uh, I don't know, piece of advice or whatever, but piece of information. There's still a lot of people that can't run their businesses because people aren't wanting to go back to work.
Ugh. Yeah.
So people are on unemployment, and
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong with unemployment if you need it, but there's a lot of people that aren't going back to work. So we'll get word from our manufacturers that like, hey, we have raw material, but we don't have enough people, literally bodies in the warehouse to get this out to you.
Yeah.
And so it's a real problem. It's
Hmm.
so if somebody sees on our website that we're out of stock, what I would recommend is getting on our wait list. It's a pop-up on our screen. So if you go to getmimifit.com, it'll come up like, hey, if you're here for AHCC, get on the wait list. And
Hmm.
you can put your email in. We will let you know. I also recommend getting on our text notification list. This is a list of people who get first dibs on any inventory that we have because we do sell out quick because people are waiting for this.
Right.
So I can pass the number along to you if you
Yeah.
want.
We'll put it
And
in the show notes.
just you personally, I would get on our text notifications
I know,
too.
because I've been waiting.
Yes.
Oh gosh, no, because when I first found out, I was like, oh, you're sold out. And then I was finding out about the patent, and I was looking at all of these different companies that have HCC, and almost all of them were sold out. And
Yep, it's a global issue.
yeah, it's important to, turn your labels around, guys, just because it says it's AHCC, look at
Yeah.
what's in it.
Yep.
Um, well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to put all of your links below, but I'm assuming probably the best place for people to contact you would be Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram is great. You can always slide into my DMs. I personally respond to every request and message, and it just might take me a few days to sort through all of them. But I do make it a priority to make myself available. And I will say, I did just get a Telegram, which is more of my sort of uncensored information
Yeah.
that Instagram is not letting me put on my Instagram without them jeopardizing my business.
Hmm.
So I've Telegram is a censorship free. And so I started that recently to help continue like getting information out that I know
Yeah,
people are sort of desperate for.
it's important. Well, I
Hmm.
appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. It was super fun.
Of course. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Balancing Hormones Naturally. If you found this helpful, I would love for you to share it with a friend and post it on your stories and tag Balancing Hormones Naturally podcast so we can get this message out. You can find me on Instagram at Leah_BRUEG, and I would absolutely love to hear from you.